We're ready? Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Everybody looks really happy today and joyful. So welcome to the November 14th, 2024 Mobility Working Group meeting. I'm Councilmember Jose Rodriguez from the City of National City and will be chairing your meeting today. Before we begin, I would like to ask Tessa to confirm that we have quorum.
Thank you and good morning, Chair. We do have a quorum for this meeting.
Great. And I would like to go over to ask our interpreter to please introduce themselves and go over the process and procedures.
Good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, World, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, that interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation if you're in the meeting room. Please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días, aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio. Silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias.
Thank you. And before we begin the agenda items, I would like to simply review on any working group members or members of the public who wish to participate. For those working group members, you could simply raise your hand and identify yourself for public record, please. And for those individuals in the public, if you're here in person, please fill out a speak form. Or if you are joining us over Zoom, simply raise the hand raised button. So moving on to item number 1, public comment, non-agenda public comments. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. And before we jump into non-agenda public comments, for the record, I would like to state that for the board policy, the amount of time allowed for verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to offer comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. Based on these factors for today's meeting, the public will be allowed 1 minute for their comments. I do have one public commenter at this time on non-agenda public comments. Alex Wong, please come to the podium.
It is crucial for SANDAG to prioritize Mission Valley. The community is a national superstar in transit-oriented development. It will add 50,000 new residents in mixed-use developments. Residents will be able to live, work, and shop without leaving the area. The number of short 10-minute trips in Mission Valley will explode. This will produce exponential growth in Green Line ridership, but only if the Green Line gets 7.5-minute frequencies or better, because people will not want to wait up to 15 minutes for a 10-minute trolley ride across Mission Valley. That's too inconvenient. They will drive instead, further worsening congestion and emissions. SANDAG must also fast-track improved bus, bike, and aerial gondola connections to the Green Line. Right now, getting from Hillcrest to Mission Valley requires long waits for a bus that has to stop for traffic, get stuck in traffic, and go downhill on winding roads. An aerial gondola connecting Hillcrest to Fashion Valley will fix that. Aerial gondolas can come up to every 10 seconds, and they fly straight as the crow flies, completely avoiding traffic and traffic signals. It would thus be faster to travel by aerial gondola than to drive between Hillcrest and Fashion Valley, even without traffic.
Thank you. That concludes the non-agenda public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any working group member comments? Yes. Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. Just wanted to follow up on a minute motion that was made earlier this year where we requested to work with the Commission on setting the agenda. So we would like to kind of bring that back and to see if we can either work on some type of work plan with this working group, because our main question is just how are we setting the agenda? We've noticed that there's been a few really important items that have gone to the Transportation Committee, the Board of Directors, we feel that this working group should be working on as well. So, think of this as kind of your technical advisory group. We've got lots of, diverse cities here. We've got lots of technical expertise that we feel that we could really incorporate into the general plan, into the regional plan. And that's really our main focus is with the upcoming 2025 regional plan. We'd like to know what pivots, changes are being proposed from 2021, from comments from the CEO and the last few board meetings that we've sat in on. It seems like there are some major changes that have occurred regarding the 5 big moves in particular. We support an agenda item on the 2025 regional plan at our December meeting, if possible. One option we think worth considering is improving on those 5 big moves, revisiting that, and maybe going with a few 2 to 3 smart moves, something along those lines. Also focusing on complete corridors, flexible fleets, and focusing on these 2 to 3 moves that will better address the region's mobility objectives of moving people safer, faster, and cleaner. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. I do think it's important for us to work together. And so if we can have conversations individually so we can work on setting the agenda forward, or if there's any other individual working group members that would like to be a part of that, I would certainly open that conversation. Thank you. Any other committee work member comments? No? All right. So moving on to item number 2. 2 and 3, consent item. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
There are no public comments on the consent agenda.
Any committee member comments? No? I would like to entertain a motion to approve.
I move that motion forward.
Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Carroll. Thank you, Ms. Seabury. Do I have a second?
Second. Okay.
Yeah. Second by Mr. Mario Sanchez. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Any abstentions? Got 1 exception, 2 exception, 2. Thank you. All right, motion carries. Moving on to item number 4.
Excuse me, Chair, I did not catch who else abstained. I got Mo Samek and
Yeah, Mr. Williams from Escondido.
thank you.
Jonathan Schabel, Escondido. Is this incorrect?
We'll make sure to change it. It meant is Craig Williams up there.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 4. We will now hear from SANDAG's regional planner, Michael Turlip, on the Regional Digital Infrastructure Network Master Plan.
Oh, sorry. I hear you back there, Kendall. Thank you. Thank you to our IT folks back there. You guys do excellent work day in and day out. Good morning. My name's Kate McCauley. I'm a senior planner on the strategic partnerships team here at SANDAG, and I'm joined today with my colleague, Michael Turlip, who I will allow to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Turlip. I'm a regional planner here with SANDAG. I'm also on the strategic partnerships team. Happy to be here.
So part of the reason we are here today is to help enable regional technological solutions. Our region has historically and continues to invest in advanced technology solutions. We understand that next generation solutions will improve our community's safety, efficiency, and sustainability. As an agency, we also recognize that we must prepare for additional connectivity capacity in order to support our world as it becomes increasingly digitally reliant. So how do we enable these technologies? Connectivity. We recognize that connectivity is the key to enablement. Increasing connectivity capacity enables advanced emergency communications, like pre-equipping our roadways with dynamic signage, as well as increasing redundancies in our data exchange networks. However, we have a large problem today. We recognize that there are extensive gaps in our infrastructure, specifically our broadband infrastructure. This prohibits our ability to both connect our publicly owned facilities, which therefore also inhibits us to deliver expeditious projects. It also limits our ability to enable our most vulnerable populations to access our roadways and make sure that they have the ability to evacuate during any sort of emergency, right? And so ultimately at the end of the day, what we're looking to do today is discuss how we enable filling in these gaps. SANDAG has just completed our regional digital infrastructure network master plan. We partnered with Kimley Horn to develop this master plan, and I will turn it over to Michael today to discuss the contents of the master plan.
So as Kate mentioned, connectivity is extremely important for us meeting our regional technology and mobility goals. And the master plan is designed to help SANDAG respond to our regional broadband needs. The master plan proposes that a strong, well-connected regional digital infrastructure network would bring several different benefits and opportunities, including optimizing our existing investments in transportation, reducing the need for redundant efforts, and promoting cost-sharing opportunities amongst agencies, as well as ultimately eliminating our need to lease infrastructure from private ISPs, especially as our bandwidth needs increase significantly over the future. And so how does the master plan go about doing this? Well, it starts by identifying where the gaps are, and then it creates a high-level network design that fills these gaps and meets our regional needs. And then it provides us with various different considerations around when we actually want to go about building priority broadband projects. Additionally, it provides us with various implementation tools that we can use in the immediacy. Going into more detail on the components of the master plan, we started the master plan by engaging with our stakeholders. And from the feedback we got from our stakeholders, which was from representatives that were representing your jurisdictions, we were able to understand what the existing conditions were for our regional digital infrastructure. We're also able to learn that most agencies anticipate their broadband needs to increase significantly over the next 5 to 10 years. Additionally, a significant number of agencies have facilities with unmet broadband needs. Taking this information, the master plan creates a high-level network design. This network contains a range of short-term and long-term projects that would fill the gaps in our broadband infrastructure, as well as meet our regional broadband needs. 3 of these projects were selected for preliminary design due to the high number of regional plan projects that would be able to utilize them in the future. And this includes broadband along the SR52, the 125, and the SR54. The master plan provides a 30% design submittal for each of these 3 projects in the hopes that we can expedite the deployment of them in the near future. And so now we want to implement these projects. And the master plan offers us a range of implementation tools, including considerations around governance alternatives and funding opportunities. But we want to recognize that these specific tools will require some iterative discussions, as well as further stakeholder engagements to get the real benefits out of them. However, in the immediacy, the master plan offers our jurisdictions a range of tools that they can use right now while they're planning out their broadband infrastructure. And this includes a sample fiber sharing agreement, which is not unlike an MOU, which you may be familiar with, as well as a dark fiber lease calculator, which will help cities that own dark fiber understand what proper lease rates will be, as well as other tools. And those are the components of the master plan. And I'm going to pass it back to Kate to discuss the next steps for the master plan.
So on Tuesday of this week, we hosted our first stakeholder engagement to begin aligning our regional partners on this effort. Some of our key takeaways indicated that this is just the very beginning of the discussion and addressing our regional digital infrastructure needs. As we move towards implementation, we will work alongside our jurisdictions to continue to build the tools discussed today and continue the master plan, to continue to allow the plan to guide our efforts in bridging our regional digital infrastructure and making our region more resilient through redundancy. And with that, we are opening it up to any questions.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask really quick if we have any questions from members of the public.
Thank you. We do not have any public comments on item 4.
Thank you. Ms. Keller? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, very informative. I was hoping you could speak a little bit more about the prioritization criteria. You mentioned that some of the projects that are prioritized now for 30%, like the 52, 54, 125, that those are feeding into other regional efforts to come. And being from San Marcos, I'm interested in the 78. I see that that's identified in the plan in the long term. So I'm looking to understand what were the criteria today, and if there are any criteria included in the plan that would inform when a route like the 78 might be analyzed in the future and considered for expansion of the network. Thank you.
It's an excellent question. I will hand it over to Michael to talk a little bit about the inputs and how all of this was determined, how we ended up prioritizing some of these.
Yeah, so initially when we were prioritizing these different broadband projects, we were looking at how many different regional plans, specifically regional plan projects, would be able to utilize these different sections. And so that's why we picked the 54, the 52, and the 125, is because there's plenty of rapid transit projects that we want to utilize that broadband for, as well as managed lanes projects. But regarding the 78 and how it's going to look when we decide on prioritization for those projects, we are really going to be engaging our stakeholders. We already had a workshop just 2 days ago on Tuesday, just to figure what everybody else's priorities are, what sort of projects and opportunities that they would be able to utilize broadband along the 78 or the 76, the 79. So yeah, that's how we're looking at it, is we're really just want to get feedback from our different jurisdictions, and then we can collaborate on building out that broadband.
Thank you. So no prioritization criteria for the other projects just yet, but you're looking for the stakeholder effort to inform that.
That's correct.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Samak?
Thank you, Chair. Mo Samak, City of Solana Beach. You mentioned about one of the important element of this to fill the gaps, but I was also interested in knowing what are the existing infrastructure that we're trying to capitalize and develop those gap analysis to make sure the networks are okay. And my second question is, there are some potential state and federal funding, but you're also looking for jurisdiction cost share arrangement. Has any analysis been done to identify those obligations?
So I'll go ahead and answer the second question first, if that's okay. In terms of funding opportunities, the master plan actually does lay out quite a few potential opportunities that we could do partnerships, and that we should be looking to do partnerships to pursue these types of cost sharing agreements, right? And so we recognize that we will have to partner with our jurisdictions, especially as you're prioritizing your own projects. And so again, this is just the start of the discussion and how we start to identify priority areas that we can develop out together, fund together. And so, yes, we will capitalize on funding from federal grants, from state grants. And then, of course, if there's a local match, we will see how we can work alongside each of you. Again, this is just the start of the discussion. We also recognize there will be various discussions we need to have on governance structure in order to make sure that we recognize how we can kind of streamline all of these processes and make sure that it's not super clunky to ensure we fill the gaps. Regarding your first question, I will allow Michael to go ahead and jump in. Oh, yeah.
I believe he had some addition to the second question, but
I was going to follow up on the first question.
sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll answer your first question after you.
Thank you for that. So my question was, have any analysis been done for those 3 priority projects? And do we know what are the shortfalls as far as you characterize it as matching fund, but we don't know what that is.
I see. No, we're not sure yet. No. So we just came into possession of the master plan. This was literally just finalized within the last month. And so this is the first time we're both socializing it and getting feedback on it. And so if you have feedback and you have ideas, this is actually part of the reason that we're hoping to start to solicit some ideas from our jurisdiction. So if you happen to have any cost sharing ideas that have worked for you or your jurisdiction, we would love to hear about them because we want to employ them in practice as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and answering your first question around existing infrastructure. So a part of the effort of the existing conditions report and the gap analysis was gathering all the data for where jurisdictionally owned broadband infrastructure exists. And so we have that all mapped out in the master plan near the beginning. And what we realized during our workshop is that's a big part of this project, just at the very beginning, is having everybody understand where each other's infrastructure is, because that's how we can begin collaboration. And so that is going to be a big part of this initial effort, is getting everybody to understand how everyone speaks about broadband. How does everyone handle their broadband policies, jurisdiction to jurisdiction? So that beginning conversation is happening right now. And yeah, it's a very important component of this.
Thank you. Do we have any other committee member questions or comments? All right, this is a discussion item only. Thank you so much, Ms. McCall. How do I pronounce your name again? Macaulay. Thank you, Ms. Macaulay. Thank you, Mr. Turlip. Moving on to item number 5, we will hear from SANDAG's own Deputy Director for Planning, Jennifer Williamson, and Associate Regional Planner, Emily Doss, for an update on our airport transit connection.
Good morning, everyone. It's kind of weird to be over here instead of up there. But it is good to be back with you guys. So this morning, I'm going to give you an update on where we are with our airport transit connection project. And so just to remind you of where we started, the project has been under some level of planning for the last couple of years. In February of this year, we took the project back into planning. It was in implementation. We brought it back into planning for a number of reasons. And those reasons included the fact that we needed to reassess the connections, given that SANDAG is no longer pursuing a central mobility hub. So we needed to look at where are our existing transit centers and where is it best to connect this airport transit center to. Additionally, we needed to really evaluate the alternatives that were being discussed. So at the time of February, there were about 13 automated people mover concepts that had been developed with associated infrastructure. We wanted to give the trolley a little bit of more due diligence. There was only one trolley alternative that had been developed to support connections to the airport. So we've been working pretty hard internally to develop a trolley alternative that we think could be competitive with the APM, or at least bring them both to the same level of analysis for consideration. And then additionally, when the former concepts were developed prior to February, they were developed looking at a model that included pre-COVID information. So ridership, populations, travel patterns, all that information that was pre-COVID. We wanted to look at these alternatives and understand conditions in a post-COVID world. We know that travel has changed. We know the way that people are using transportation has changed significantly. So we're going to be remodeling these alternatives using what we call, in this kind of a technical term, it's the ABM 2+. But in that ABM model, the activity-based model, we will include an updated survey that Emily will be talking about today that will provide current information on how people are getting to the airport, where they're coming from, and not just visitors and people utilizing the airport, but we also really want to consider where are the airport employees coming from. They are going to be a big market. There's not a lot of parking down there for the airport employees, and we know today that they are one of the biggest users of public transit. So we are also going to be integrating the survey data into our new analysis. So where does that leave us? Right now, we are looking at connecting at 2 existing points of transit centers, if you will. So Santa Fe Depot from the south, we know that a lot of the airport employees are coming from South Bay. So the airport transit connection will be looking at a connection at the Santa Fe Depot. And then we're also looking at Old Town. We know that a lot of folks coming from the North County don't want to go out of direction to loop back around to get to the airport. So we are looking at Old Town as a primary connector. Today, you can connect to the airport via the airport flyer that the airport, saying airport an awful lot, aren't I? The airport provides service to. So that's an option today. If you guys want to connect to the airport using transit, you can do it at Old Town. You could also do it at Santa Fe Depot with our Route 992. So those are two connections that we know really work for transit. We are looking at 3 modes, and the difference in these modes is pretty significant. So automated people mover is a fully electric service, and as such, it has to be entirely grade separated. So you couldn't operate it at grade because people couldn't walk across the tracks. They'd be electrocuted. The light rail trolley service, this is something that we operate today. The region is very familiar with how to operate this service, knows what they're doing, has a lot of infrastructure around supporting it. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to give it some more evaluation. You know, we know how to do light rail service in this region. We don't necessarily know how to do APM service. So we really want to make sure that we were giving full analysis of that light rail option. And then finally, enhanced bus service. So we know that these rail extensions could take some time to build, and we're going to be looking at an enhanced bus service that could be provided in the interim. You know, if it takes us 10 years to construct these projects, we really want to recognize the amazing new facility that we have at the airport with all that additional capacity. And so we want to provide a higher level of bus service to get folks there using transit. So this is just a reminder to you. We had 5 people mover concepts. Again, this is the fully electric people mover, autonomous people mover, and they had a variety of alternatives. So there was 13 alternatives that had been identified. A lot of these have different termini. If you look at these, we looked at things like Civic Center, we looked at Convention Center, we looked at Santa Fe Depot, we looked at the rental car facility that the airport currently operates, and then additionally, we looked at possibly connecting at the Middletown Trolley Station. So that's why there's so many concepts. It's not necessarily that the technology changes, it's where it's going and then what it requires to operate to that location. So is it a tunnel? Is it a bridge? What is it to keep it grade separated? The trolley concept, so you're probably wondering, I've talked a lot about this trolley concept. We had one initial trolley concept that connected the trolley and diverted it from Santa Fe Depot off the existing alignment. If you think about how the trolley operates today between Santa Fe Depot and Old Town, we would divert that trolley off at kind of a branch, if you will, at Hawthorne, and then take it down to the airport. Under that scenario, it was going to be really hard to operate much better than 20+ minute frequencies, if you will. And we know that people are very time sensitive getting to the airport. So we took a step back and we did a lot of operational analysis to determine how could we operate all those services between Santa Fe Depot and Old Town. There's currently the blue line, the orange line, and the green line all operate through those areas. So you've got a lot of service that is already operating, and how we could interline an airport service was really kind of a difficult question. So what we've done is we've taken a step back, and if you know today, we have a trench that essentially takes the trolley under Hawthorne. And this allows us to bypass, that intersection, allows a free flow condition for the trolley through that intersection. But it's only one intersection. What we're proposing under our new concept is that we extend that trench for multiple blocks. So we would take it all the way from Hawthorne to Ash Street. And what that would get us is the ability to bump up our service frequency so that we could achieve a 10-minute frequency for the trolley to the airport And additionally, it would benefit all of those other lines that operate through that same corridor. You know, and when you're thinking about it, you're wondering how does that work? Well, when you're not stopping at all of those intersections and getting all that delay from, you know, stopping at lights and gates and all of those things, you really do save some time, and it allows us to optimize that time and use it better for frequency. So this new concept would include a significant trench through the corridor, and that option is going to move forward as one of the potential alternatives. The enhanced bus option, and as I said, you know, this is something that we're looking at for the near term. We want to bump up the frequencies for everybody using the bus. The Old Town service to the airport has been very successful. We see ongoing increases in ridership all the time. We know that the airport's parking situation has gotten much, much better, but generally for visitors, but not for employees. So we're going to be looking at how we can bump up the 992 service. This, we're going to have to be working on where we're going to find the funding for this in the next year, but MTS is partnering closely with us, as is the airport, to really look at, you know, what are our options in the near term. We're also looking at a midterm option, because if it does take us several years to get to the construction of possibly a rail alternative, we need to figure out how can we optimize that bus service. And when I talk about optimizing it, I'm talking about speed and the travel time. You know, it doesn't matter what service it is, as long as people are getting there quickly and reliably. That's the important thing. So we're going to be looking at maybe transit-only lanes. The Port Master Plan has transit-only lanes identified through Harbor Drive. And could we build those out sooner to support both the port's future desires for a shuttle, as well as our airport transit service? So that's something that we'll be evaluating in the midterm. And that's a much less intensive option than potentially building a people mover or the trolley concept. And here's the alignments that we're looking at. We look to connect and interline with the Blue Line service coming out of downtown San Diego, and then also up to the airport. So where does this leave us? You know, we have a lot of options. We're looking at 3 levels of pare down is what we're calling them. The first level would look to eliminate 2 of the people mover options that go to Middletown. If you know Middletown Station, it's kind of the station between County Center and the Old Town. It would require to have the automated people mover there, it would require a direct access ramp from I-5 to get people there without having to go out of direction. And then additionally, it would require that we add some additional platform work that none of our stakeholders are in support of, you know, and we've also heard from North County that really, they don't want to stop the coaster in between Old Town and downtown. It really slows down the overall service. And so we're going to be eliminating those 2 options as part of pare down number 1. Pare down number 2 still leaves us with 13 remaining concepts, 13 rail options, and then the bus option. So what we're really going to do there is kind of take a common sense approach and look at what are the infrastructure requirements for those 13, where are they going, and what's the ridership, and what's the cost benefit of those. So really, you know, we're going to be working with our stakeholders. We're going to have a comprehensive workshop to take that second round of pare down. And the goal there is to reduce these down to 5 or fewer, then take those into the final pare down, which will happen during the environmental process. So we're going to go from 15 to 13 down to hopefully 5 or fewer by the end of next calendar year. And with that, I want to turn it over to Emily Doss. She's an associate planner working on this project. Oh.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. As Jennifer had mentioned earlier, when we went to the board and this project transitioned to planning earlier this year in around February, we identified the need for an airport travel survey. So we, this past summer, have been prepping and have launched our survey in the fall, beginning on October 4th. that it's an intercept survey, which are face-to-face surveys where surveyors are out there on the ground talking to real airport employees and passengers, and it's combined with an online self-administered survey. So the airport surveyors have been collecting responses at the airport terminals, Terminal 1 and 2, as well as the 992, MTS Route 992, the airport Old Town Flyer, the airport rental car shuttle, and the employee shuttle that's run by the airport. And additionally, the online surveys are available through information located within Terminals 1 and 2 at the airport. So our goal is to collect about 4,500 survey responses. And as Jennifer had mentioned, this data will be used to update our transportation model, the ABM model, which will be really, really important for advanced ATC planning and the concept screening or the pair down process that Jennifer had mentioned. Among airport employees, we have hit our intercept goal and are on pace to be successful with collecting our online survey responses. And then among our air passengers, we exceeded our intercept goal of 3,150, but are slightly behind the curve for online surveys. The goal is 750 with an additional 500 special stated preference surveys, which are surveys that go into further detail. So here is are a few highlights from our intercept survey, which ended October 18th. So we collected 3,900 surveys, as mentioned, exceeded our goal. We've found it very interesting that about 50% of the survey respondents are traveling for leisure, vacation with their family and friends, and about 25% of respondents were traveling for work. And the survey respondents reported that 60% were visitors and 40% were residents of our region. And 75% reported that they were either dropped off by someone that they knew or via an Uber or Lyft or some other TNC. And then yes, lastly, our sampling goal for surveying residents and tourists on Route 992 and the San Diego Airport Flyer, we hit 99% of that goal. So moving forward to our engagement strategy for this project. Since this project has transitioned to planning, we've been working fairly closely with our regional partners through one-on-one stakeholder meetings and project development team meetings. And over the past few weeks, the SANDAG Public Affairs team has been working holistically on an outreach strategy that considers project milestones and goals while aligning with the overarching goal of SANDAG Public Affairs. So over the next few months, this is our first presentation of several. We'll be presenting to the Transportation Committee tomorrow, as well as the Board of Directors and partner agency boards starting next year. And then in March, as Jennifer had mentioned, we'll be hosting our partner agency workshop, which will be in person. And the goal of that workshop is to really focus down on the 13 final concepts that we have and work on our pair down process to eventually move into the next, the step 3 of the group of concepts that we have to study finally. And then in spring 2025, we'll be putting together a public sentiment poll, which will be a survey open to the public. And we'll also be hosting small roundtable meetings with stakeholders. And then we'll be looking to host 2 public meetings next summer. One will have an urban core or downtown focus, and the other meeting will be a regional focus meeting. And then From there, we will begin our environmental process late next summer, early fall, and we will be hosting our environmental public scoping meetings. So more to come on all of this, and I'll pass it back to Jennifer to share the rest of our timeline.
Yeah. And I should mention that, this outreach effort is really important because before we took it back in February, we hadn't done an extensive public outreach. A lot of people knew that they wanted a trolley to the airport. That's kind of the way we hear it is, why doesn't the trolley connect to the airport? But we haven't gone back and told them what it looks like. As you've seen, this is a pretty comprehensive project that's going to have a lot of impacts to a lot of folks. It's going to bring benefits, but it's also going to be hard to construct. So we need to get out there and start talking to people and make sure that we're fully transparent in their understanding of what this project is. And that's really the goal between now and when we enter the environmental process. So the good news here is that we are fully on schedule. Excuse me. In November, we told the board of directors, we committed to them that by the fall of 2025, we would be entering our environmental process. And right now we are fully in schedule to do that. You've heard a lot about what we're doing. We're basically going to be towards this fall and then the end of this year, we're going to be wrapping up our survey efforts. And if you guys have time and want to go online and take the survey, we appreciate all input. So feel free to do that. It's really great. We're going to be working on that trenching concept for the trolley. It's something that, it's a great idea, but now we have to work out the details of how that would work. We're also going to be really refining those bus options and figuring out how we're going to get that service in place because the airport, exciting, they're going to be opening up in September of 2025, their first phase. So we need to get going on that. Spring and summer, so next year, what we're going to be doing is getting all that travel data that we got from the survey, getting it in the model and start modeling our alternatives. And, that's always a bigger process than we think, but super critical to really understanding how the ridership is going to look for each of these alternatives. Doing all that public workshop, we're really excited to get out there and start talking to people about the projects. And then in the fall is the kickoff of the environmental process. So we'll be having our NOP, our notice of preparation meetings, our scoping meetings. We'll be implementing our near-term bus service, fingers crossed on that. And then we'll continue to figure out how we increase that bus service and enhance it until we can get possibly a rail option out there. So with that, I am done and happy to answer any questions anybody has.
We're going to go ahead and ask to see if there's any public comments before community member comments.
Thank you, Chair. We do have one in-person public commenter. I'll call on Alex Wong. Please come to the podium.
I strongly support the airport rail connection, but I'm deeply concerned by SANDAG's proposal to have the airport trolley merge onto existing green and blue line tracks at Hawthorne. This would create a bottleneck which will slow down trolleys, cause delays, and limit frequency and capacity. The airport trolley will merge onto existing blue and green line tracks at a 90-degree angle. This is a very sharp turn. Airport trolleys would have to go through this junction very slowly, and while airport trolleys are turning through the junction, they'll block the junction, forcing green and blue line trolleys to slow and stop for the airport trolley. This is a recipe for delays. That's why it's crucial to ensure that the airport rail connection will not merge onto existing trolley lines. This will free up existing trolley tracks, allowing MTS to maximize blue and green line frequencies. Airport train frequencies would also be maximized as they would not have to compete with green and blue line trains for track space. Better yet, let's automate this new airport rail link so that it will be able to run up to every 2 minutes, just like with the airport people mover.
And that concludes the public comments on item 5.
Thank you, Mr. Renteria.
Ted Anastas with the Airport Authority. Just wanted to say thank you to Jennifer and Emily and your team in coordination with the airport. Just 2 brief comments. It's important to note that the adopted airport master plan includes a landing area for any transit connections, either trolley, bus, or rail. And that is directly to the west of our existing, or excuse me, under construction new Terminal 1, equidistant between the existing Terminal 2 and the future Terminal 1. So we've preserved that transit designated area in our master plan in 2020 and look forward. It's very exciting to look at the concepts now to connect. And then in the spirit of promoting mobility, it's important to mention that there is an option with the San Diego Flyer. It's this month have been active for 3 years. It's a free electric shuttle that runs from the Old Town Transit Center to our terminals. So encourage you to give that a try. We have seen our ridership grow continuously. And this summer, we've seen over 1,000 passengers a day using the San Diego Flyer. Thank you.
Thank you for the good information. Additional comments and questions? Yes, Mr. Aboud?
Just for the survey, I just had a quick question. I just didn't know if you were reaching out to those who attend like Comic-Con or other conventions, because it's not within that time period of when you have to have the report done, possibly. So I'm wondering how you might be reaching out to those visitors who attend special events during the summer, or the organizers of those events.
Yeah, great question. So we actually, it was our intent to have the survey, have our contract. Our consultant is WSP that's working on the travel survey, to have it all executed and ready to go by the busy conference season. Unfortunately, we just missed the tail end. We were able to capture a few large conference and the travel that's associated with all of them. And they're identified and we keep track of them on our schedule. And additionally, we will note, like this past weekend was Veterans Day weekend. So big travel weekends like that will have, red flagged in the data report too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. May?
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. Looking at the schedule, so it's intended to go to CCOR process in the fall for 2025. So before that, I suppose that we'll select the preferred alternatives at some point.
We had talked about doing that. I believe that we are going to let the environmental process play out and pick the preferred alternative during the environmental phase of the project. So we will not, we'll pare them down. As I said, 3 pair downs. The second pair down will take those 13 alternatives down to 5, probably, 2 APM, 2 trolley, and a bus option. And then we'll let the process play out, and an LPA will become more apparent once we have those detailed environmental studies.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Von Bloom?
Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned the stakeholder groups and then also the future partner agency workshops. Can you give a little bit more detail on who is included in the groups and who's included in the partner agency workshop?
Yeah. So the stakeholder groups have been fairly small to date. It's been the airport, the port, MTS, NCTD, Caltrans, and SANDAG, really, and City of San Diego, all of the kind of the impacted folks that have been involved. But now as we push off into this next season, we're going to expand that out to a much broader group. We had previously a airport steering committee that had been developed for this project. We'll start incorporating all of those groups into the outreach, and then we'll also be going out for the public outreach. So, if you as a interested party want to be a part of those groups, absolutely. This group, you guys get to be stakeholders. So we will absolutely be reaching out to different agencies throughout the region, because as Emily said, we want a regional perspective. Lots of people want transit to the airport, and we need to get a local perspective of people that are actually going to go through the construction of transit to the airport possibly. So we're really looking at refining our outreach to target both those different groups.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you. Yeah, just a few quick questions. In terms of travel times, do you have any initial data on kind of comparison between the 3 options that you've considered? Just asking that because ultimately I think travelers are going to choose whatever option is the most convenient and the fastest. And, a barrier to that I do see is that dwell time. So making the transfer from either, from North County, from the coaster to whatever mode they may be going to the airport. So do you have any initial analysis that you can provide on travel times?
We do, but I'm not going to share it with you right now. And the reason why is because we're updating our trolley concept with that trenching, and that will change the travel time. Right now, I'll share with you the APM is by far the fastest travel time, and then the trolley, and then ultimately the bus under the existing condition. But I don't want to give you exact times until we have those updated with our new concept development.
Okay.
So we'll be bringing that. You get to see us many, many times. So we'll give you an update at our next go round.
Okay. So more to come on that.
Yeah.
And then on the, I guess on the bus option, an option we're always thinking about is flexible fleets. Is there any opportunity to consider flexible fleets, along with complementing the bus service? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've talked about that quite extensively. And there is an opportunity potentially to incorporate flexible fleets. The issue is that the volumes of people that we're currently looking at to get to the airport via transit, I mean, Ted just told you 1,000 trips a day are coming from the airport flyer. We would need a whole fleet of flexible fleets. And going to the airport, the last thing we want to do is increase the number of vehicles going to the airport. So we are looking at how they might augment it, maybe not directly to the airport, but then at the transit centers, could they be used as distribution? So that's kind of something that we are talking about, but right now we're really focused on trying to get through the transit connections, the more, infrastructure intensive options. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional comments, questions? Yes, Ms. Seabury.
Ms. Williamson, when you say trench, does that mean it's going to be open? It's not going to be in a tunnel?
Yes.
So that's down Hawthorne. And so you would have to take away lanes from cars, would you not?
There's a trench right now that operates through that 1 or 2 block, if you will, under Hawthorne Street right now. So we would extend where the trolley currently operates. We would essentially take that where the trolley operates and trench it today. The goal would be not to impact travel lanes. That's something that we're looking at right now because, as I said, we are just starting on the engineering, if you will, the preliminary engineering to support that trench option. So I can't tell you 100% or not that we would impact travel lanes. The goal would certainly be not to, but there's always the possibility.
So the trenching crosses Hawthorne. It doesn't run parallel.
Hawthorne.
I see. Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Thank you so much for all the fantastic work. This is an informational item only. Moving on to item number 6. Our very own Cecily Taylor will be hearing an update from the Purple Line.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Cecily Taylor. I'm a senior planner on the mobility team and also the project manager for the Purple Line. I'm excited to be sharing with you today an update from our conceptual planning study that's just about wrapped up and letting you know what the next steps will be for this project. So to recap, the Purple Line is a transit line that will eventually provide people traveling north and south between San Ysidro and Sereno Mesa through National City, City Heights, and Kearny Mesa with a more convenient option than sitting in traffic. From earlier regional planning and corridor planning, we noted that higher speeds are really critical for providing a competitive travel option between these communities because they're spread over 30 miles in total. So given this long distance, we've been assuming that the Purple Line will be a rail project with grade separation to allow for stations to be located in the heart of communities, and that will also allow the rail to go between stations following a very direct line to keep travel times low. So really what we've been assuming so far is a subway type system that will have substantial tunneling. And this route will provide dependable transportation for low-income communities and an attractive alternative to driving. It will connect to several transit centers, including 3 primary trolley lines, many rapid bus routes, and thereby expanding access to jobs, education, medical services, recreation, and more. This will improve the quality of life and provide economic opportunities for some of our region's most vulnerable communities. And the Purple Line will also help us achieve our regional mobility and climate goals. By providing an alternative to driving in this corridor, it will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, fight climate change, and give these neighborhoods cleaner air to breathe. Now, while the vision is still to ultimately connect between San Ysidro and Serena Mesa, there are several other planned transit improvements in the South County portion. So what we really need to do is holistically consider how all of those services can best work together, and that will be done in a separate study. So for taking this first bite at looking at the Purple Line as part of our conceptual planning study, we really just dug into this section of where the project would serve the northern portion of the corridor, where there's not as much complexity, at least in terms of overlapping planned rail. There's still plenty of complexity. And the findings from this study will definitely help inform those project assumptions in South County when we get to that. Now, the communities along the northern portion of the line vary widely. If you can see very clearly the difference in building heights in the University and Sereno Mesa areas, as opposed to the more residential areas of National City, Encanto, and City Heights. And we also need to consider that these neighborhoods are changing. They all have ongoing development. SDSU Mission Valley in particular might be a good example. And so the land uses, physical constraints, and natural resources along the corridor are diverse and continuing to change, and we needed to take all of this into account as part of our conceptual planning study. It will also be important to continue to track these new developments as the Purple Line project planning advances. Now, with our consultant team, we took a look at some similar rail projects throughout the country and summarized how long each step of project implementation might take for a mega project like this. Now, what we've done so far is just that early planning step at the far left. The next phase of planning will require a broader look at all of the possible options for this project, the different routes, the different modes, where stations could go, and we want to be sure to bring our partners and the public along with us. So that process will definitely take time to make sure that the project we land on is really the best for the community. We also need to evaluate all of the complexities of crossing canyons, identifying where there would be tunnel, where we could have aerial rail. We want to limit impacts to existing homes and businesses, as well as the environment. So there's a lot that needs to be figured out, and that's why that step takes as much time as it does. And then from there, we would finalize and build the project through the design and construction phase. But again, think about tunneling for maybe 20 miles or even having aerial structure for that distance. That will also take a lot of time, we expect. And for reference, these are some of the examples we looked at. On the bottom couple of rows there, the Blue Line trolley and Seattle example, those didn't take quite as long, but note that those were much shorter segments than the 20 miles we're considering, even just between National City and Sereno Mesa. And these also didn't involve any tunneling. The first example there, also in Seattle, is the longest corridor we looked at, and even that project has limited tunneling. So I hope this helps give a sense of why we expect such a long path ahead for this project. I also want to note that you'll see that all of these projects were funded in part by a tax that was approved by voters. So we don't really have enough details about what the Purple Line will be exactly to start working on a detailed funding strategy, but we do know that identifying a local funding will be a challenge. There are a lot of state and federal programs that can help us make this project a reality, but all of those require a local match. And for a project of this scale, we know that will be a big commitment for our region. Now, to get into a bit of the technical findings, again, the first step we took was to look at what it would mean to build the Purple Line as this fully grade-separated, higher speed rail, essentially a subway system. We identified a handful of options of where this route could go. But I do want to stress that this is just technical exploration. We certainly aren't ready to make final decisions without doing a lot more stakeholder and public feedback. But as part of this exploration, we did see several feasible options. Starting in the south, while we considered future extension of Purple Line to continue farther south to the border, we did look at connecting to the Blue Line there in National City, and think that it's most likely that a tunnel could help bring this service through Encanto and City Heights. There are a lot of canyons that you can see, creeks along the way, and by having the Purple Line underground through this section, we would minimize impacts to those natural areas and also minimize impacts within the densely populated areas. From there, as the Purple Line continues north from City Heights, it needs to overcome the most significant elevation change along the route. That's a nearly 400-foot drop between Mid-City and Mission Valley. Now, here we identified a handful of options. We could have the tunnel try to connect as straight as possible and have a portal kind of near the SDSU Mission Valley campus. We also looked at maybe having Purple Line follow Fairmount Avenue a little bit farther east, and that way it could become above ground a little bit sooner, and it would need to curve back over to connect to the campus. We also might be able to stay in a tunnel even through Mission Valley. That would require a steeper path, and ultimately a lot more work needs to be done in the next phase of planning to determine what option would be best. And I'll point out that part of why we looked at following Fairmount Avenue was because we could transition to an aerial structure for a little bit sooner, and that would help reduce costs. But it does mean following a less direct path, making tighter turns, and those kinds of things do result in slower speeds. So these are the kinds of trade-offs that we're really just starting to look at and understand. We need to work more with the public and the stakeholders to ultimately decide what will be best. Moving farther to the north, depending on exactly how the Purple Line would be crossing Mission Valley, whether it's above or below ground, it could either rise more gradually or more steeply to then connect into Kearny Mesa. And similar to the south, it would be possible to go a little bit east and essentially follow I-15 through Murphy Canyon and stay as an aerial structure. And then the one or maybe two stations in Kearny Mesa could be underground or aerial. But again, the same trade-offs apply that I spoke to before. From there, the Purple Line could continue north towards University City. We did again find that there could be an above ground option or a below ground option. The aerial option would follow I-805 freeway, but we would need to be sure to avoid restrictions around the Miramar Airfield. We haven't done detailed coordination yet to understand what that would mean. An elevated station for the Purple Line in UTC would then probably be between the UTC and Executive Drive Blue Line stations where there's roadway right-of-way. An underground option, on the other hand, would follow the tunnel between Kearny Mesa and University City that could travel below the San Clemente and Rose Canyons. And then an underground station could be constructed near UTC to connect to directly to the Blue Line and Transit Center there. But something really important to note with this option is we need to take into account the future Losan tunnel that could also be located here. There would be a great opportunity to connect the Blue Line, the Purple Line, Amtrak and Coaster service with bus service and really make UTC a premier transit station. But it would definitely be very complex, a complex engineering challenge to figure out how all of those different kinds of services can connect and fit in that space. Looking to the north of UTC, again, whether we're staying above ground or below ground, looking to connect to Serena Mesa means crossing Carroll Canyon, and that's about a 300-foot drop in elevation. So this would likely require some kind of elevated structure across the canyon, even if the Purple Line was generally underground. Serving Serena Mesa itself is also a challenge. We've really spent some time trying to understand what the future of that neighborhood will look like and how we could get people from a station here to jobs that are more spread out, and what that ultimately means for expected demand for the service. But in the end, I just wanted to highlight that there are several alignment options that we've started to look at that would be feasible from this conceptual engineering perspective and could allow us to have stations that directly serve the hearts of these communities. And once we'd laid all of that out, we needed to cost out the project. And as I had in the staff report, that came to about $19 to $23 billion, where the range there is really dependent on how much of the rail route is aerial versus in a tunnel. A tunnel is more expensive. And so that's just the capital cost for building the track. On top of that, we would need to purchase new vehicles, construct a new maintenance facility to serve this new subway type of mode. And those two together would cost another $2 to $4 billion. And the range there is really driven by how far the trains would need to travel to reach the maintenance site. There's really a big difference between just having a 1 mile connection and a 3 mile connection. We also modeled what ridership would look like based on the route that we laid out. And for just this section between National City and Serena Mesa, we saw about 25 to 30,000 estimated daily riders. And of those, about 10,000 were new transit trips. So this is definitely meaningful demand, but it really wasn't as strong as we might expect for a really high quality transit mode like a subway. That ridership, for comparison, is more on the order of the Green Line and Orange Line trolley today. And we think part of what contributed to that lower ridership than expected is we have a lower regional growth forecast than previous planning efforts have assumed. Over the next 25 years, our latest estimates are showing about a 3% increase in region-wide population. So while many of these neighborhoods are zoned to be much more dense, there just isn't a guarantee that that development will actually come. And I'll say that despite the ridership being lower than expected, these numbers still look strong in terms of being a contender for federal funding programs, especially when we take into account that there will be historically underserved communities and transit-dependent riders who would benefit from this. And really, this is why we do planning, right? We had an idea and we wanted to explore what would be possible and analyze how that would perform. So we do feel this was a valuable study to look at this next level of transit technology in the region and evaluate what would be a forward-thinking project. But given that we're seeing these high costs and lower modeled ridership, we think it will be really important to take a look at the other modes that could serve this corridor and see if a different option, like maybe a trolley that we already have here in the region, could help us reduce costs. Now, even though a trolley would be slower, it does come with the opportunity to have more stations and connections along the line. And we really need to get into the next phase to do detailed comparisons of all of those and determine what would be best. And while we still envision the project ultimately connecting San Isidro to Serena Mesa, we realize it won't be feasible to build an entire 30-mile route all at one time. So it will be really important for us to identify some potential phase 1 options for this project. And we did a little bit of looking into that as part of our planning study. And something we found was that the strongest ridership that came out of the modeling was in the southern portion between National City and Mission Valley. So even though Kearny Mesa and Serena Mesa are definitely significant job centers for our region, we didn't see as strong of demand there. So that's just all to summarize the major findings of our study. I also want to point out that while this effort was going on, SANDAG, you may know, was also putting together the 2025 regional plan that would list out all of the assumed projects in the region by 2050. And so we need to take into account these findings from our focused Purple Line study that this project will be more expensive and more complex to implement than we previously thought. So we'll continue to study this project in detail, but we do need to make some assumption for the regional plan. We might need to scale back to have a shorter segment than that full 30 miles, at least for what we assume can be done by 2050. We also want to consider that a trolley would be a lower cost than this subway option. And again, this won't close any doors for what this project could potentially be, but it'll just be our best guess for what we include in the regional plan. Okay, so what's next? Well, we really need to start that study that could look at other project options, what it would mean to implement the project as a trolley, see where we might be able to do less tunneling, where we could add other stations, and do a really detailed comparison of all of those alternatives. And that would include significant community and stakeholder engagement to understand what the community needs are and use those needs to narrow down to the most promising options. And since we expect that it will take at least 20 years to get a rail service up and running, we also are starting a planning study for a rapid bus that will connect these communities with transit sooner. That rapid would probably need to rely on the freeway for the most part to keep travel times low. So we need to think through where those bus stations could be and what would be needed to help prioritize the bus and make it a convenient option. And lastly, we still need to understand all of that planned service in South County. So that's the Blue Line trolley and the planned improvements on that line, the Purple Line, rapid routes, and a potential extension of the Amtrak and coaster service to the border. We need to evaluate how all of these different services can work together to connect South County communities with downtown and the rest of the regional transit network. And all of these 3 studies will be starting in parallel next year. And I wanted to give a little bit more detail about the alternatives analysis, although you kind of got a preview from Jennifer's presentation. This will sound very familiar. So first we need to start with what all of the project alternatives could be. These are the different transit modes, the general route options. And at the same time, we need to collaborate with the stakeholders and the public and agree on what are really the most important goals and objectives for this project. Then when we compare the different alternatives, we can understand what the community needs are that need to be met and use that to start paring down. From there, we'll do an iterative screening and continue working with stakeholders and the public to pare down, continue adding more detail to those alternatives that seem best and can minimize impacts. And this will ultimately identify those recommended alternatives that will advance into formal environmental analysis to get the project into the next step towards implementation. I'm presenting these findings to you today. I'll also present to the Social Equity Working Group later this month. But then from there, I'll share the study findings with the Transportation Committee and Board of Directors and get their input on the study findings and the next step of doing a procurement for that alternatives analysis work. At that point, we'll have finalized the study report. I realize I don't have that to share with you today. This is just an overview, but that study report executive summary will be posted to our project website, and the full report will also be made available by request, of course. And we'll, throughout the years that this project will still go through planning, we'll continue to be putting updates on the project website and sharing through the email list. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Cecily. I'm going to go ahead and ask if there are if there are public member comments.
Thank you, Chair. I have one in-person public commenter. I'll start with Alex Wong. Please come to the podium.
I strongly support the Purple Line, but I believe the Purple Line ought to emulate Bechtel's proposal for LA's Sepulveda subway. This proposal will feature automated trains coming every 90 seconds and travel at speeds faster than freeway driving. These trains are shorter in length and heights than commuter trains, meaning that Purple Line tunnels and stations could be smaller and constructed much cheaper and faster. Consequently, you could afford to build more stations in dense neighborhoods, putting passengers closer to their destination. These trains would also come 5 times or even more frequently than commuter trains because these trains would be automated, thus saving tons of operating costs. These subway trains would also accelerate far faster than commuter trains, allowing for faster travel times.
And that concludes the public comments on item 6.
Thank you. Had Mr. Anasis.
Thank you. This is also an exciting project. I'm curious about the comment you made about the ridership and just looking at the 805 corridor and its congestion from Sereno Valley all the way down to Chula Vista, but you concluded that the ridership may not be there to Kearny Mason, Sereno Valley. Do you have any thoughts or data about that? It's an interesting conclusion.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to transit, it really, you need to be able to have transit at both ends of your trip. So while the 805 corridor is very busy, those folks could be coming from areas that aren't currently served by transit, or if it is, if they do have transit available, it might be that they would have to make multiple transfers, and that just makes that less of a likely choice. We did use a model looking at existing travel behavior in the region and understanding what it would mean to add the Purple Line to the transit system, both with today's transit system and the 2050 planned network. And that was the ridership that came out at about 25 to 30,000 riders per day, which again is similar to what we see on the trolley, orange and green line trolleys. But we were thinking that for having this higher speed subway type system, we were thinking that it would be higher.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Mr. Aboud?
And you did mention BRT service. I know that in transit, there is the service of San Isidro to Sorrento that was identified. So that would be kind of a similar route.
That's right. That's right. That would sort of be we'd be able to get that implemented sooner because it won't take as long to construct the capital elements needed to have bus service there.
And do you see that as having impacts on ridership if they have two options that are similar?
It definitely could. I think if we were to have a bus service that's already connecting these communities, when we get to the point of opening a rail service, we would need to think about whether it still makes sense to operate that bus service. Like I know when the Midcoast opened on the Blue Line extension, the 150 express route, they stopped running that. There were other routes that the MTS continued running, but made adjustments to consider that now there was a rail option to connect some of these. So that would need to come a little bit closer, but.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Seabury.
Thank you for that report. I just wanted to let you know, the big dig in Boston took 9 to 10 years to plan and 15 years to build. So don't lose heart and keep on working because this could really work for San Diego. I'm all for underground. I love the tube in London. And if they could build that tube from under the English Channel, this could be built as well, I believe.
Thank you, Ms. Seabury. Additional committee member comments or questions? No? Thank you so much for the great work. And I echo the sentiments of Councilmember Seabury. These projects are very important and we do have to keep grinding to make sure that they happen. So thank you. So this was a informational item only. We do have an update from SANDAG. I believe Richard Ratcliffe will be providing the update.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Mobility Working Group members. I just have a brief update for you guys before the meeting concludes. I'm Richard Ratcliffe, as he mentioned, and I'm a financial analyst on the financial programming team here at SANDAG. It's that time of the year in which SANDAG wishes to collaborate with the local jurisdictions on gathering information on the Transnet Local Streets and Roads program. And for those who don't know, the Local Streets and Roads report gets prepared annually and includes the details on the status of existing, ongoing, and future projects within the local jurisdictions. Like previous reports, the FY 2024 report will be presented to the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, or ITOC, in spring of 2025. And I will be following up after this meeting via email with each local agency, and I will be providing more information as well as the official Excel template form that will be used, that we will ask you to complete. This form will be different from the forms used in previous years. And in addition to the completed form, we also ask that if you have any photos or anything like that, links available, please share those with us. Due date for all submissions will be January 7th of 2025. And if there are any additional questions, comments, or concerns, you can feel free to reach out to me, as I will be the primary point of contact for this effort. And my information will be provided in the email. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any committee member comments for Mr. Ratcliffe? No? All right. Well, thank you all so much. The next Mobility Working Group meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 12th at 9:30 p.m. I'm sorry, 9:30 a.m. Meeting is adjourned.